What's going on, friends? It doesn't matter what motorcycle brand you choose to ride, they all have their issues. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Harley-Davidson is the greatest motorcycle out there and you're never going to have an issue with it, and it's also the most reliable thing you could possibly buy. As we all know, especially if you rode Harley-Davidsons long enough, you know that's not exactly quite true in the reliability department, depending on what your model of bike you have. Harley-Davidson builds an excellent motorcycle. Well, depending on who you talk to, that might be they used to or they did in these years, or quality's just flat gone to crap here in the later years. Now, I absolutely love Harley-Davidson motorcycles, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you they are the absolute best motorcycle that you could buy in terms of reliability. But with that said, they're not bad either, and they're absolutely not unreliable. Every year of Harley-Davidson, well, I should say every generation of engine family, they've all had their own quirks, including the Evolution Sportster and the big Twin Evo. They had their issues as well. The thing is that it depends on how much you want to deal with, and you got to remember, this isn't a guarantee to happen. Just because there's some known problems with these engines, it's not guaranteed to happen to you unless you have one of these Harley-Davidson engines. Guys, please don't forget, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Now, when I say there's a lot of known issues out there with certain families of Harley-Davidson engines, that doesn't mean it's going to happen to you unless one we can almost guarantee is going to be the Twin Cam 88. If you have the spring tensioners in there, that's definitely not something you want to mess around with. You want to get in there and get an upgrade kit with your cam chest to get that modernized to the hydraulic tensioners. That is probably the closest to a guarantee of a failure that you're possibly going to have. And now I know guys are going to say, well, I opened mine up with 50,000 miles on it, it's never been touched, and it still looked pretty good. That does happen. But on the 88s, you have a higher risk of something happening to you. Now, Twin Cam 96, that is an excellent engine as well. Really not any known internal problems with the engine. Yes, compensators are an issue. Is it guaranteed to happen to you? More than likely. You probably, if you have the stock compensator in there in an early model Twin Cam 96, it probably will likely eventually fail on you. The good news is that failure is not exactly as catastrophic as what could happen with the Twin Cam 88s when the oil passes get clogged, when the tensioner shoes disintegrate and starves the engine of oil, and you have a catastrophic failure. And yes, when it comes to twin cam engines after 2003, the argument is made is that the crank run out on these motors. No, it is absolutely not perfect. It's not going to be absolutely perfect being press fit from the factory. Is it pretty close? Yes. Do they have a terrible allowance for run out? Yes, they do, especially when they're sitting in the motorcycle. But with a press crank being mass-produced, it's never exactly going to be perfect like it would be if you had one built at an actual crank shop or a machine shop. Well, crank shop, machine shop, kind of the same thing, but crank shop is a machine shop that just specializes in crank shafts. Now guys, Twin Cam 103 motors, if you're looking for a twin cam, that's probably about as good as it's going to get as far as reliability and known issues with these bikes. The only thing I can recommend on a Twin Cam 103, and especially all twin cam engines that have the automatic primary chain tensioner, is to convert that back over to a manual one. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of headache. I've mentioned in previous videos that I do believe those ratchet up on their own because they will tighten and they will over-tighten accidentally over time, especially if you do a lot of hard shifting. What I feel like this does is it pulls the engine and the transmission together way too tight with the chain being over-tightened, and that does, in my opinion, lead to further issues with the crankshafts and the runout, as well as bearing failure in the transmission. Now, as far as Twin Cam 103 goes, you're generally pretty golden in those years. Now, guys, the Milwaukee-Eight, we all know the debacle on those engines with the 107s, the 114s, the early years of those engines. They are generally very reliable motors for the most part, except for the oil sumping issue. Now, Harley-Davidson had some fixes for that with a return tube, and there was some oil transfer. There was some bad issues in that in the beginning, and Harley-Davidson fixed that in 2020. Well, fixed that with an updated oil pump, and some late model 2019s might have possibly gotten that updated oil pump. Now, I still don't believe on those engines that is the absolute be-all to end-all. When it comes to the Milwaukee-Eights, I would still recommend vented dipsticks and also maybe even a vented transmission cover. My opinion on those is that the crankcase pressure is just too high, which leads to the sumping issue where the oil is not returned back to the top of the engine properly. And by going and using a vented dipstick and a vented transmission cover, in my opinion, with the updated oil pump, that really helps to alleviate that issue. Now, guys, when it comes to Sportsters, there really aren't any inherent flaws in the engine. But once again, even the Evolution Sportster is not exempt from having its own mild set of problems. The clutches on these bikes, generally really good. This very rarely ever happens. I haven't seen a lot of them, but the clutch plates, where they are riveted in there, those tend to actually come apart and scatter into the primary. Yeah, it sucks. Yes, it's an issue. Does it happen often? I haven't seen it very often myself. I've heard of stories of it happening. I've only seen it a time or two. But for the most part, that's really the only thing with the Sportster engine that really stands out to me as a major issue. Now, of course, big Twin Evo owners, you probably already are well aware of this. But the big Twin Evo has a very horrendous pushrod angle. And now, while these motors will go for years and years and years without any issues, that pushrod angle is really hard on the lifters. So it is definitely to your benefit before 40,000 miles on your engine, or if your bike has not reached 40,000 miles, which with an Evo, it's probably still possible, depending on which one you find. If you got a deal on one, it's still pretty low mileage. But change those lifters out before 40,000 miles. That's generally the mark where we start to see lifter failures due to that horrendous pushrod angle. But a good set of lifters in there, and you're good to go for another 40,000 miles. Now, while you're in there working on your Evo, since they're actually pretty easy to work on, easy to take apart, I would highly recommend replacing the inner cam bearing, especially if you have an Evolution motor after about 1991-92. Harley-Davidson, their infinite wisdom, actually regressed from a Torrington inner cam bearing to an INA inner cam bearing. Now, what does that mean? Well, the issue that we have there is that the Torrington bearing has just basically more needle bearings in it. The INA bearing basically has gaps between the needle bearings in it, and they tend to fail. They tend to fail pretty early on. And as you know, with an Evolution engine, everything in that motor is dependent on that bearing and that camshaft. You lose that bearing and that camshaft, you're bending push rods, you're possibly bending valves, you're dropping lifters. You're going to have all kinds of issues that you would probably rather not deal with when it comes to your Evolution motor. Not saying that it's hard to fix, but hey, we don't want to spend money where we don't have to, and I'm all about fixing problems before they become a problem. So guys, with all that said on Harley-Davidson motorcycles and their engines, overall, they are generally very reliable motorcycles. Now, don't let a few bad stories out there deter you from a Harley-Davidson or make you want to run out and sell yours. These are just some of the known issues with the motors that we can actually go in and prevent from happening before they actually fail on us. So, once again, Harley-Davidson, I wouldn't say is the most unreliable motorcycle out there, and at the same time, I'm not going to say it's the most reliable motorcycle out there, but they are damn good motorcycles, and you really can't go wrong with one if you know what you're buying, and you take care of these little general issues with these motors before they become a major problem for you. Now guys, one thing we can say about Harley-Davidson that they are the absolute best at, and if you know anybody that's better at fit and finish than Harley-Davidson when it comes to motorcycles, I want to hear about it down in the comments. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you this week. If you guys enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. But till next week, guys, you stay safe on the streets, ride smart, dodge those cars. I'll catch you guys back here next week with a brand new video. Thanks for watching.